the most shocking pick I've ever seen covering the NFL draft. One draft prospect that was angry until he found out where he was going. And I think I'm actually happy. I don't know. We've got all that more. I'm Jason Fitz. It's time for Zero Blitz. Welcome to a post-NFL draft first round Zero Blitz. Charles Robinson, Damien Harris, I'm Jason Fitz. We're hanging out as we have just finished a marathon night. And guys, first and foremost, had a blast. I will say this. We had a great time. Let's just peel back a little bit. Like 3-4 days ago, we didn't really even know each other. C-Rob and I worked together a bunch, but Damien new to the fold, right? And so we've been on Zoom and all that stuff. But like tonight, sitting on the couch, getting to cover the draft was like our first time getting to hang out in this capacity. And it was a blast. Like it was fun getting a player's perspective. For you were drafted, right? Like, how was it sitting in a couch just watching the draft?
Dude, it's a lot of fun. One thing I alluded to early was, what kind of moment this is for these kids. I remember what it meant for me, just knowing that I was going to be drafted. I didn't know if I was going to go in the first round, the second round, third round, fourth round. I had no idea. I just felt blessed and grateful for the opportunity to play in the National Football League. And so, seeing 32 guys walk across that stage or, enjoy it from home, I know that they had that same feeling. So, that was exciting. Like you said, getting to know you guys, getting to know all your stories about your sleeves, your tattoos and everything. It's just good getting to know you guys, getting to be with a good group of guys to sit and just talk ball with.
C-Rob, what was the first draft you covered?
Oh my gosh, you serious? So the first year I covered the Lions was 2001. So the 2001 draft would have been the first draft I ever covered.
That's interesting to me because A, you were just a total rock star tonight in every element of working together. But B, think about how different the draft is today than it was in 2001 when you covered it the first time.
Yeah, it's completely, the atmosphere of it. We're sitting here and we're watching pictures of Detroit. There's 150,000 people there.
Crazy. I never thought I'd see that many people gathered in Detroit for anything other than an Eminem concert. I never thought I would see that many people in one spot in Detroit.
We're like, y'all chose to go to Detroit? No, it's fine. It's fine.
Oh, come on. Detroit's good. It's on the come up. Come on. It's been there for a while. But yeah, it was just, I think I used to, Radio City Music Hall was it. Like you'd always go to Radio City Music Hall and it was always, it's not particularly well appointed. It's run down a little bit, but you'd see a lot of characters walking around. Like it was always kind of this atmosphere where it was fun people watching. And so when they decided to take it out of New York and put it on the road, I was like, is this really going to work? Like, and even as it's gone through kind of its different cities, Nashville was fantastic. Philly was fantastic. Green Bay is going to be insane next year. But I think Detroit is the quintessential football starved town. They've got some success now. You can just feel how in the city is. And then the draft lands there. And you can't not look at that and go, this isn't a tentpole moment for it's not just on TV now. It's literally when you can get 150,000. And by the way, they had to stop at that point, letting people in. Like at that point, it's like everybody on the outside. It's like when you played in Alabama in Tuscaloosa. First Alabama game I went to, I was like, it feels like there's more people outside the stadium than in the stadium.
Dude, the Walk of Champions used to have easily 200,000 people out there.
This is great, but that's what that felt like today, where it's just like an unbelievable atmosphere, and it was a lot of fun to do it this way. And another thing to see all the platforms now that it's on. We're doing our show. Everybody's doing a different show. You can kind of pick and choose all these different mediums and how you want to absorb it. It is quite the industry now.
It's funny to me because I have so many, we've talked about this before, but I have so many memories in my life of where I was sitting for different drafts. Like I remember the house that I was in when the Raiders drafted Sebastian Janikowski. And I remember where I was sitting when Darius Hayward-Bay was drafted. These things because for me, the draft was always like an exciting, like, oh, something's going to get, and I've got like a couple of different friends in Nashville that I've known for 25 years that we text each other Merry Christmas on the first day of the draft every year because you're getting like this moment. But I'll never forget going before, like when I was just podcast trying to make it in this business, going to the Chicago draft with my buddy, and I saw it live and I was like, yeah, this is different. Like the energy, the vibe, the electricity around it. Like the Super Bowl is really about two teams and their fans and then a smattering of other people. The draft is every single fan, and they're all there and they're all happy and they're all partying, and like Nashville covering that in person at the time for ESPN was transformative for me. Like just seeing what it could mean to a city. And I think about that with Detroit, because you're right, Detroit is on the come up, but like there's just a moment where every single person that was there will have this memory of Detroit and the draft. And like, it's so cool because it's like where memories meet, because you, Damien, will always think of like what it's like for a player to be drafted. For me, like, I just think about what it's like as a fan to be there with other fans that have gone through just the that you go through for years as a fan. And you're like, this is the time it gets better. So like, I think that's why I love covering it. And that's why tonight was special. I think it was special, you know, for us doing this together for the first time, you know, in this capacity. And it was cool to be, you know, in the thick of it through the whole thing. Now, I thought this was a really good draft, but now everybody that's listening is already like, talk about Penix. Like, people are yelling at their
We had a moment, right?
That's the crazy. Yeah, you had a moment before we even had a moment.
I will never forget that.
Crazy.
Yeah.
The moment you had,
I'll be like, I remember where I was when Penix got drafted. I was just like, this isn't real.
Well, and you were getting that, like, so peel behind the curtains. We're rolling. Like, we don't have commercials. But like, we got a crew that's working their tails off, but we don't have like 100 people in a stats group that's giving us information in advance. Like, we're going flying by the seat of our pants. And you, C-Rob, were crushing it because you're getting all of these picks early. Like, we were getting picks as soon, like, we were a pick and a half ahead half the time. So all of a sudden, C-Rob gets and look, the first few picks of the draft went according to I think what most people thought. Nobody was surprised by Caleb. Nobody was surprised by Jaden. Maybe a little surprised by Drake, but not much. Then the Cardinals go off with Harrison. No surprise. Like, Joe Alt goes at 5. Again, everything's going sort of chalk all the way. You know, we get Malik Neighbors going at 6, right? Everything's chalk. JC Latham at 7. You called that for the Titans. Everything's chalk. And as you're calling all these picks, we get to 8, and there's just this look. Like, Damien and I sit next to each other. C-Rob gives a look, and he's like, I'm not saying it until they say it on TV. You held that pick for like 3 minutes while you made us agonizingly wait.
No, there was no way. I looked at my phone, and it was Penix. That was the text got Penix. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, and I texted back, what? With like 5 question marks. Like, no way. Like, I couldn't. And it was all exclamation, like capitalized, you know, I'm freaking out. And I'm like, this can't be real. And then I got another text from someone else, Penix. And I'm like, there's no way. Like, this is I can't say this. And it wasn't like it was people I absolute trust, like hammerlock trust. But I was like, I'm not saying this out loud because this does not compute in my brain. Like, I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, did someone trade with Atlanta? And I just don't know. Did like somebody come up? I'm like, this can't be Atlanta. And I was like, I'm not going to say it because then I'll look stupid. And I'll always look stupid. And the last thing I want is somebody who's watching the live stream to like pull it. look at this moron. Penix at 8, and Penix doesn't call up till 38, right? And I'm always the idiot. No, I will remember. There's no other point I would be like, I'm not saying this out loud. And I literally said to you guys, I'm not saying it. Like, I'm not going to say this out loud.
Well, and I want to be clear. For me, I was really, in my mind, as a Raiders fan, everybody knows that, I was prepared for the possibility that Michael Penix Jr. was going to be drafted at 13. And you said something when we were at our dinner last night that I'm like always coping, right? Like, my fandom's always coping. I think in my mind, I came in today saying, all right, I'm just going to have to justify to the world why 13 is not a bad pick. Like, if you love him at 18, you loved him at 30.
Now,
don't
imagine
trade
being a Falcons fan.
That's where I was at 30. So like, I say that because I like Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback. But Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback, at 8 to the Falcons, who just gave Scrooge McDuck-type money to Kirk Cousins, doesn't make any sense. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Nah. Okay, so imagine this, though, in a perfect world for Atlanta, right? Screw the money, because we know that they spent X amount of money on Kirk Cousins. They're going to have to spend X amount of draft capital on Penix. All that aside, what if somehow this just works out for Penix? What if this ends up being the spot for him? What if we talk all the time about, oh, it's got to be the right fit, it's got to be the right scheme, it's got to be the right timing, it's got to be the right everything, right? The entire world is sitting here like, this is not the right fit, this is not it. But what if it is?
Jordan Love felt like that too. I do remember that. As I thought about it, I was like, oh yeah, I remember when Jordan Love got taken by the Packers.
Yeah, like,
I was like, holy what?
But let me push back on that though. Like, the big difference is Penix isn't young.
Right.
So
that is a great point. That's a good point.
If you're Penix and you're older than some of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and you're saying, all right, 2 years money is set to Kirk Cousins. Nothing's going to change that. So best case scenario, Penix is going to be 27 when he gets his shot to prove himself, like, and 27 and 2 years into a contract where they're going to be, now what are we going to be saying? Well, we got to figure this out quick because they got to pick up his fifth-year option.
Let's play out the awkwardness too, because there's layers of it. There's the initial awkwardness of he walks in, it's a storyline. It's always going to be a storyline. Every time he struggles now, it's going to be a storyline. Like, what are you doing with Penix? Penix looked great in practice. All that. That's all going to happen, right? For the next couple of years.
That's a headache for Kirk Cousins.
Absolutely.
God, it's a headache.
So you're like, okay, another layer of it is, if for some reason Penix plays in the next 2 years, significant minutes, significant snaps, something went wrong. Either Kirk Cousins got injured or something went haywire. So then you're at least, all right, well, they had a plan B. It kind of works out then. But if Kirk Cousins plays really well for 2 years, now you're like, does he go the full 4-year run? Can you sit Michael Penix for 4 years into his 5th-year option? That seems insanity.
At some point.
But here's another thing that people they're not realizing right now. It's setting up a Russell Wilson situation where 2 games into year 2, the Falcons are going to sit there and go, Kirk's got injury guarantees for his 3rd year. If he gets hurt, his 3rd year is going to be guaranteed for injury. We got to start thinking about taking Kirk off the field in year 3, or saying to Kirk the same thing the Broncos said to Kirk, which was, need you to waive your injury guarantees. If you blow out your ACL in week 16, it doesn't guarantee your money next year because we got another option here. That's exactly what is going to happen.
To which Kirk Cousins also, he would say,
Hell no.
Yeah. Why the hell would I do that?
It might not be hell either. It might be a couple other 4-letter words.
I had to catch myself because I almost said something myself.
But think about the layers of mistake here. Either, like every angle of it, either you just wasted a ton of money on what's going to become one of the worst free agent signings in modern NFL history with $180 million, or you wasted a draft pick for a team that, frankly, could use the draft pick. Like, let's not get it twisted. Through all of that, you've also created a communication and trust issue with the quarterback that you just paid all that money to, because, as has been made very clear, they didn't give Kirk a heads up. Like, if this was a situation where when they signed Kirk, they were like, hey, man, we're going to draft a quarterback, just so you know.
Right.
Then I'd say, okay, fine. Like,
right.
You got your quarterback now, the quarterback of the future. It has been made evident by Kirk's people that he didn't know in advance, right? So if he didn't know in advance, now, not only is Kirk pissed, Penix is pissed because he's going someplace he's going to have to sit. The locker room has got to look around. Like, Dame, you know this, but you can't tell me the locker room isn't looking around and saying, if they'll do that to
QB1,
what are they going to do to me?
Well, dude, we talked about that, during the draft. Like, the QB is the head of the snake, you know what I mean? And if you see the management of the organization treat your QB1, who is getting paid $180 million, $180 million, and look at what they just did to this man. With no warning, with no signs of like, hey, this might happen, with no nothing. So if I'm a player, I put myself in that situation. If I'm a running back that was drafted in the 3rd round, I'm in my 3rd or 4th year, I'm looking like they finna do my ass dirty. You know what I mean? Like, I cannot rely on these people to do right by me, regardless of what I do.
So allow me to play devil's advocate here for a minute for both of you. What you just described, almost everything you just described Green Bay after they took Love. Pissed off quarterback. Could have used the draft pick. Why didn't you use it on a wide receiver? Why didn't you use it on a piece to help Aaron now instead of a guy? How long are you going to sit this guy? They ended up sitting him 3 years, right? We're just talking about him sitting Penix 2 years. I understand the age is different. That's true. That's an extenuating factor in all this. But here are 2 things that I think factor here. Number one, if you can do this to a quarterback, and I say this knowing Kirk, I don't know him extremely well, but I know him enough. Spent time around him, spent time with him, done some Yahoo events with him in the past, whatever. And he's a guy you can do it to. I mean, I hate to say it, but the truth is, Kirk's not going to go out there and talk. He's not going to go out there and blow it. He might be mad. He might say a little something, but then he's going to keep it moving. He's going to go, I'm not going to revisit this.
And that'll kill you in this business.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, he did it with Diggs. When Diggs was there and Diggs is hammering him, right, in Minnesota, he just kept it moving. Like, he's like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to engage in stuff. So there's that one aspect of it. If you're the Falcons, that could potentially work out. The second aspect of it is, again, Green Bay. We talked all our right, and I include myself in this, right? Like, Brian Gutekunst, the GM there, I'm like, what the hell are you doing, man? Like, and all you did was agitate Aaron and all this stuff. It took 1 year of Jordan Love, Aaron going out, and then seeing Jordan Love make that progress in year 4, right? Year 3, really. And to me, by the end of that year, I was like, okay, you know what? I got it. And I'm much better now in retrospect. I'm much more comfortable with the decision. If that's how this unfolds in Atlanta, he gets on the field in year 3. He has a Jordan Love type of situation where by the end of the year, you're like, hey, you know what? He's viable. Good job. You created a situation where you've moved from one to another. I think it lessens it. But again, it's still a situation where if they don't compete, win games, that's what Kirk was signed to do, activate the offense, all these different things. It's, it's still a lot of complication in the middle of everything.
I'm just confused. How did we get here? Because I feel like I remember when I was going through the draft process and, everybody before me is like, if you're a first round pick, especially a quarterback, you better be ready to play day one. Now you've got guys who are top 10 picks getting paid. I couldn't even imagine what the number 8 pick is slotted to make. And he doesn't have to worry about, I know that we're talking about he might be pissed because he doesn't have to play 2 years, or he won't get to play 2 years until, he really gets on the field. But I know a lot of guys in the league are going to be like, I get 2 years of a number 8 pick contract, just to sit and watch and learn and develop, behind the scenes. Then I get on the field for 1 year in ball, then I can ask for a contract.
But you don't want that at quarterback in organizations though, right? I mean, you don't.
Yeah, I'm just confused on how we even got to the point of this thought process. You know what I mean?
And how the Falcons got to that.
Yeah.
Tell me you're stacked as a roster everywhere else. And you know what? It was a freak year. And we got the number 8 pick in the draft because of some wild thing. And you're like, you know what? We're still a really good team. We can afford to go out and get that guy. That's not the Falcons. The Falcons had needs. They had needs all over the place.
Fans are going to sit here and they're going to go, okay, Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Rome Odunze, Drake London. That would have been pretty dope.
With Kirk or Cousins.
Or one of these offensive tackles. Or, you talk about the pre-draft process. I heard this nowhere. So all this stuff now that's coming out everywhere else. And again, I don't know how many of these narratives I believe about all this. Everybody's trying to move up to get Penix. That's crazy to me because I did not hear once from the combine on that there was any inclination that the Falcons, that there was this worry that Penix was going to go off. I told you when I came out of the combine and there were people telling me Raiders. And when I brought this outward, and this is the teams that are talking to each other about free agents, all these different things, it was in 2? You're talking about in 2? Second round, right? And I'm like, I guess. I don't know. You tell me.
And I think to your point, I'll buy that the Falcons hid the noise if we want to give all the
okay, we want to give them credit. Right.
Want to give the Falcons
sure.
credit. 4 or 5 teams aren't hiding noise. If that many teams are talking about trying to move up, there is no way that nobody's hearing anything about it. True shocks don't happen in the draft. And this is, like I said it as we were coming into the show, this 7th year I've covered the draft. It is the most shocking pick I can ever remember seeing because it came from out of nowhere. We knew when Mina Kimes famously fell over on my lap when Daniel Jones was selected. Everybody knew there was a chance that Daniel Jones was going to be picked, but you were like, yeah, it's not real, right? Nobody saw this coming. And for nobody to see this coming in a quarterback stacked draft for a team that just spent that much money on Kirk, this just feels like bad business. And
it almost sounds like an identity crisis. What do we want? What flavor do we want? We don't know.
Yeah, who are the Falcons
I don't know.
Right now?
Yeah.
Are the Falcons, are the Falcons a Super Bowl contending team today?
No. No, not by any stretch of the imagination, because you look at the video of the GM and the owner of the Falcons, and then you tell me if that looks like...
I want to know that.
Yeah, you tell me if that looks like a conversation of a Super Bowl contending team.
And I don't understand that. I'm like, if Arthur Blank, to me, there's no way Arthur Blank, who's ultra involved.
He is. He's very involved.
Yeah.
And as out of all the owners, in my experience in the league, he was always one of the owners that we knew he had skin in the game.
Yeah.
He made decisions. He was aware of
for him to not have any idea that they're going to take Penix, it makes no sense.
Nobody should know more than him.
No.
I mean, you know what I mean? We're
especially
not talking
with
about
that. He cut the check. He's cutting the checks.
Exactly.
Kirk,
and if he is willing to approach somebody, I don't know what was said, but with that type of demeanor and that look of confusion, that means something went right.
I mean, to your point, you can't tell me he's not walking in the room saying, question, hey, why did I just write a massive check? That's my only question. Somebody answer it for me. Like,
not only that, why am I going to write the check to this guy who's not going to play for?
Well, I was going to say, imagine if you're Michael Penix, right, and you see like that type of interaction with the owner of the team, with the GM over picking you. You know, what kind of relationship does that set up with you, the organization, the owner? You know what I mean? That sets up just so much awkwardness. Like, especially obviously between Kirk and Penix, but like just Penix in general, Kirk in general. There's so much. It's so awkward.
And another thing too, when you think about this, the fact that he's 24, and when you play this out, he's 21. Okay, it means he gets on the field at 23. Let's say he's a normal human quarterback, which I still think you get into your mid 30s, especially a guy who's had injuries, right? You get in your mid 30s, you probably starts to decline, right? Not every Tom Brady, and it just doesn't work that way. So if he's a normal human quarterback, even successful or whatever, let's say 35 is kind of that's it. That's kind of the peak, right? Well, what if he sits for 2 years? Or as we saw, Terry Fontenot's like, well, if he's got to sit 3 years or if he's got to sit 4 years, okay. So he gets on the field at 26 or 27. And now you're like, okay, well, if he's a normal quarterback and he lasts until 35, where the hell is his wheelhouse? Is his wheelhouse now at 31? Because it takes time. You don't step in. I mean, sorry, not Rich DJ Stroud, right? You don't step in and go, hey, I'm at my best right now. I'm in my prime. He's going to be in his prime, but not have any NFL snaps potentially. So then his prime's pushed off, and you're like, okay, he hits his prime at 30 or 31. He's like 35. Like it's just the craziest thing ever.
Yeah.
To me, all of this comes back to something you've talked a lot about, Dame, in the last 48 hours. And I think sometimes the coolest thing when we get to hang out with guys that played in the league is just the information you can glean on where success comes from, right? Mm-hmm. And you talk about identity a lot, right? I think what we learned from the Falcons is that they don't know what their identity is. When the owner, like, this is very simple. I don't care what business we're talking about. I don't care if you sell widgets. I don't care if you run a weed shop. I don't care if you run a football team. Your owner, your GM, your day-to-day, everybody has to be on the same page. And if they're not, like, and I don't care if we're talking about Yahoo. If the CEO of Yahoo Sports does not have the same vision as the next guy under him, does not have the same vision as my boss, does not have the same vision as us, we are not going to make it as a company. And that's what it feels like the Falcons showed us
and
today.
Neither has the locker room yet. That's the crazy thing. Like, Damien, if you're there and these guys walk in, they're both new. Yeah. And you're like, none of them's won you over yet. You know Kirk's background, right? You know Penix balled out in college. You get that. But as far as you being on the field with them, it's going to be fresh. Well, what if you go out there and Penix is running scout team the way, and I'm not saying he's Mahomes, but Mahomes running scout team his first year when he sat, every practice, dudes are coming off being like, yo, you should see the dude did today.
Same did with, no offense, but that's the same we did with Tua whenever Jalen was playing, when Jalen was our quarterback. We had those moments when Tua was dicing the first team defense on scout team. We're just like, this dude is good, man. Like, how do we not put him on the field? And then it almost creates a little bit of controversy because national championship game, Coach Saban, he flips the quarterbacks, and then it's a feeling of like, oh, okay, finally, we know this kid can play.
Man. That's
but
so wild.
What does that do for Jalen?
Sure.
It shot his confidence, you know what I mean? And then he felt like the whole locker room was against him when it wasn't. We just wanted to win. Right. And we knew that at the time, Tua gave us the best chance to win. You throw these professionals, making all this damn money into a situation like that. And then you got all these guys, sitting around the locker room trying to, figure out who they like better. Because let's be honest, we do that as players. We sit there and like, first of all, who do we like better? You know what I mean? Just by being around them, what we know about them, who do we like better? Okay, who has the intangibles? Who shows up early? Who leaves late? Who commands the attention of the room? Who commands the respect and, of his teammates to play the game the right way? There's so many different factors you have to choose from whenever you're like, this guy is going to be the starting quarterback, and this is who I'm going to go to bat with.
These two guys have such different personalities.
That's what I was saying. Who do you connect? Like, if you think about this, and that team's really young, especially the skill position guys, that core is super young, right? You're going to connect with Penix. No offense to Kirk. Kirk's like a nice guy and everything, but he's older, dude. Like, especially
first of all, I was confused as hell when they paid him all that money anyways, because I'm just like, the dude's coming off a huge
injury,
you know what I mean? Off a very career-altering injury, and you give the guy $180 million. just to do this, to set up a young guy. In all reality, other than the money that Kirk is getting, Penix is set up to be the quarterback of the Falcons.
Well, and that is just one of the core things we always talk about. Like, when Kirk was signed, he's reaching out to the receivers. Like, he's doing the whole thing that everybody does. Like, hey, let's go meet somewhere. We're going to throw. Let's work out together. Now, when you get that call, you're like, you get the call from the quarterback of the future that was just the 8th overall pick. Like, you working out with him too? Like you doubling up your workouts? Nah, like, feels weird.
Especially because, to be honest, Penix and Kirk, they're not just going to get together and just start throwing. Like, hey, we're going to do this together. Like, kumbaya, we're best friends. There's going to be a happy, joyous quarterback room. Like, that's not going to happen.
When it was funny because, Rodgers had all his with the younger receivers. Like Christian Watson, he lost faith in him. There were all these things. Rodgers gets hurt in that Philly game, and Love comes in, right? Boom, boom, boom. And who's he hitting? All those young guys who he'd connect with, who Aaron had all that with. But when he is using his time on the field, these are the young guys he's throwing to. So he's creating those relationships. He's creating some chemistry there. Watson had a super long touchdown pass. And I was like, damn, he stepped in and those young guys activated all of a sudden. And I'm like, is that just because he's got rapport with them? I think it is.
It is.
I do.
There's a level, it's the level of connectivity. You know what I mean? And
culturally, very different human beings. Too.
Yeah, no, for sure. And
let's white dude driving a minivan.
Let's call a spade a spade. If we in Atlanta, who do people want? Do they want Kirk or they want Penix? Let's call a spade a spade.
I don't even think we're just talking about the locker room. I think you're also talking about the entire fan base.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the city of it, like hot Atlanta. They want Penix. I'm telling you. Even though everybody's perplexed, everybody's like, yo, what the F is going on? When it comes down to it, they're going to want Penix in the game. 100%. Kirk's going to be standing there pissed off, rich as hell, but pissed off. You know what I mean? Because one, he was done dirty. He was railroaded. He was undermined. They put him in a situation to fail, essentially. To be rich and to fail.
I talked to some people when Belichick didn't get the job, and we talked about this at the time with the Falcons. And but I talked to some people that I know that are really plugged in around the Falcons organization and guys that played there and things. And a couple of guys I talked to were like, no, Atlanta doesn't want, the city of Atlanta does not want Bill Belichick. No. Say it clearly. And it was like, well, my mind is like, well, why? If he's one of the best ever. It's like, because Atlanta is about Atlanta. And if you talk to people that grew up around it, that lived that culture, culture matters to that city. And you'd rather have somebody that represents and knows Atlanta than have somebody that comes out with the greatest resume in the history of mankind.
And I think that's part of when Deshaun Watson, they pushed in on, they tried everything they could to get Deshaun Watson because he was a guy he spent a lot of time in Atlanta. And I'm not, look, I know the off-field stuff, all that. Take a moment, everybody, the smart listeners, and let's separate that out and talk about the football. The people, you're not that far from Clemson. They'd seen this guy play. Again, black quarterback who is just oozing with talent all over the place.
And aura.
And
that
aura.
Atlanta aura.
And guys, I'm old enough that I covered the Falcons when Michael Vick was their quarterback. I have never in my life, maybe Tom, but it's on that level in terms of the fabric of the fan base, loving. I remember I went to write a story on Vic and I was talking to, it was like a 14-year-old kid and I'm asking him questions about Vic and he's like, oh yeah, I got my 7 tattoo. I was like, what? For real? and let me tell you something, it was not small, okay? I was like, all right, bro, you got a 7 tattoo at 14. They loved that dude. And I think that's real. That how that fan base is.
Yeah, I go back. L. Duncan's a great example of somebody that loves Atlanta, represents Atlanta. And the first time I was ever sitting talking to L as we were becoming friends about music, I come from a much different background than Atlanta hip hop, obviously, and watching just the way she glowed when she talked about the history of Atlanta music and what it meant to her life. And I think what we forget sometimes is when we're on the outside looking in at Atlanta, we're just thinking about a city, right? And there's a perception about it but the people that are there, man, it's these teams represent a culture, right? They represent a way of life. And I don't think it's a hot take that Kirk Cousins is a separation from that way of life. And the first time Michael Penix Jr. steps up at the microphone and just talks, he's going to speak to the people.
Every time, the first time that Michael Penix does anything to give Atlanta fans any reason to be happy, they're going to be like, he's a black quarterback that's left-handed, Michael Vick. As soon as they drafted him, as soon as they revealed that was the pick, through all the craziness in my mind, was just like, he's a black quarterback that's left-handed.
By the way,
Michael Vick.
who can throw it. Yeah. And Vic,
because Mike could run it, but hey, Mike could throw it. Mike could throw it. Y'all remember that throw he had against the Redskins on the first play of the game when he was in Philly? Yeah, that's Michael Penix, though. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that was the first thing that popped into my mind. I was like, they picked him because he's, you know what I'm saying? He's I don't want to say a poor man's Michael Vick, but he's the next.
One thing too, though, I will say about the Falcons, the weakness in Michael Penix's game is the short to intermediate stuff. You can tune that up, give it some time. As one exec told me, he's got the long ball and the long ball travels. He's like, anything else, that short to intermediate stuff, the timing stuff, work on the mechanics, brush it up. You can. So, okay, I will say, at least if we're looking for a silver lining here for Atlanta fans.
Look at us. Look at us.
Yeah,
justifying
we're trying. Look
at us.
You asked me in 2 years, Michael Penix Jr. is going to be the starter. Kirk Cousins is going to be pushed out. And we just learned
have to believe that.
We just learned that the Kirk Cousins signing was an absolute waste. That's what we've learned.
That's what we got to talk about.
They wasted the money. They wasted the moment in his career. They wasted the career opportunity for a quarterback in a quarterback-starved league. Kirk Cousins could have gone to a lot of places that would have paid him rich money.
Kirk Cousins, Raiders quarterback in 2026.
Ooh.
Now, Dak's the Raiders quarterback in 2026. Yeah, okay. I'm manifesting this. All right, we got more to get to other than just this. We're gonna break down some of the history that we got and some of the picks that we really liked along the way that were surprising. We'll do that all of that, I should say, when we come back. Guys, we had 6 quarterbacks in the top 12, and that was part of this historic night. This will be a draft that is remembered forever for that. How many of these 6 are going to end up being great? I don't know, but I will ask this one question.
Michael Penix.
Yeah, we solved the Penix dilemma. I will ask this one because coming into the draft, I know people around the league said whoever went to Minnesota would be in the best situation. Well, Minnesota was able to basically do nothing. They moved up a little bit. They gave a bag of Skittles with the sour apple ones instead of the lime, and they find themselves at the 10th pick, and bang, all of a sudden they get their guy. So, do you still like JJ? Do you still like the best situation to be Minnesota now that we know it's JJ in Minnesota?
Yeah, I do. I think I still like it as the best situation because of what we talked about on the show. You got J. Jeff, assuming you get the deal done right. He's the guy that's there. You got Jordan Addison. You got Rudolph at tight end. You can figure out what's ultimately how it's going to shake out with running back. We'll get one of these guys in the second day. And you got the head coach, is really what I think is vital. You have a head coach who is going to ingrain his offense, and it'll take a couple of years, for JJ to pick it up. But he can ingrain that offense into JJ's head, and once he's got it, if it works out well, like a la, let's say, like Sean Payton in New Orleans, he ain't going anywhere for a while. Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, he ain't going anywhere for a while. Andy Reid in Kansas City, he ain't going anywhere for a while. So that's the McVay in LA. So that's really what matters most is teach the kid the offense, make sure he functions in it, grow him, bring him along, make him better. I think actually when we started the draft, we're like, okay, what's going to happen with Drake and what's going to happen with McCarthy? I like this way that it fell more because when I look at Drake, his size, his build, he's going to play in snow and he's going to have those cold weather games. To me, he's got that build, and especially athletically because he's going to run a little bit. He's going to take those hits. I'm like, all right, I like him because JJ's narrow. He's not he ain't Drake Maye's body. Let's be real. So I like Drake in that environment. We'll see how the surrounding team comes up around him. And I like Kirk in Minnesota just because of the continuity of the pieces and the talent.
Where are you on Drake? Drake Maye goes to New England at 3. I don't think that was a shock to most of us, but where are you on the fit?
Again, I think it's too much unknown. You know what I mean? I feel like Drake Maye going into this last year and not producing the way that people expected him to me, that's a question mark. Mm-hmm. Anytime a guy is going like this and then he does this or does this, to me, that's a red flag. Then you bring him in to a completely new regime. Like I'm talking completely new. I mean, I feel like within respect, they've cleared house of the Bill Belichick time in New England. Let's just call it what it is. They moved on from him. It's Gerard Mayo's time. And although, he grew up in the Belichick system, he was drafted by Belichick, he played for Belichick, he coached for Belichick, he's going to bring his own flavor, his own dynamic to the team. With that being said, it's still unknown. I don't know how Gerard Mayo is going to develop quarterbacks. He played linebacker. He coached linebackers. He was a defensive coordinator. I don't know what he's going to do for quarterbacks. I don't know how he's put together his staff to support his offense. To me, it's too many unknowns to say it's a great fit, it's a great pick, whatever. What I do like about Drake is his size. I like his athletic ability. And I feel like he has the build to handle those cold games. He's going to get hit. New England is, regardless of who's the coaches, they're going to play nasty, gritty ball, and they're going to expect the quarterback to get hit and then get back up. It's going to be cold. The grass is going to be hard. The turf's going to be hard, but you got to get up. And I think that Drake Maye has the things to help him overcome those types of challenges. One
thing, too, we really shouldn't be undersold is his 2022 team was better than his 2023 team. Yeah. And he faced a tougher, it was tougher sledding in 2020, which I think is good. Yeah. I think it's good to not have a full house every hand. Right. And so, all right, you had Josh Downs, you had some better surrounding talent in 2022. The line maybe protected you a little bit better. And then, hey, 2023, people were gunning for you. You're like, oh, everybody knew Drake. 2022 was unexpected. We were like,
right. I didn't know who Drake Maye was. And in 2023, I was looking for it. It was almost like you were looking for 100%. A reason to be 100%. Like, is he that good?
Remember Josh Allen? We heard, all of a sudden we're like, Josh Allen, man, this is Wyoming. Holy. And I remember his last year there, I was watching every game. I was like, I know who you were, but now I know who you are. And you just threw the ball 10 yards above your running back's head. I'm like, what is going on? So it's probably good in a way that he had some adversity in that year and everything didn't go great. And you got to see him kind of respond the way that he did. But I'll keep going back to living in Houston and just being like, God, what the hell is going on? And Nick Caserio being like, dude, is Nick Caserio going to get fired? Like, does Jack Easterby crazy?
Oh my God, not Jack Easterby. Oh my God. It's a whole nother story.
We're going to testify. So, the Jack Easterby stuff was nuts. Like everything that was going on at that time, you're like, how long is it going to take for them to turn this around? And then D'Amico came back into the building, and all of a sudden you heard like Andre Johnson had kind of separated himself from the franchise, and people are like, "He won't be able to if he wants to come back in the fold, be more involved in that franchise." Like it brought them back to a successful lineage, and then just the way he carried himself, the confidence he exuded, and then he trusted Bobby Slowick and said, "That's you. That's your offense. Like let's do your thing." And we saw some guys that maybe were a little underrated, like Nico Collins had a great season last year. We weren't fully sure he was, capable of that. There can be a turnaround. We saw a turnaround. I would like to see it happen in New England.
I would too, honestly, because biased, but I love Gerard Mayo. And I see, the way that D'Amico Ryans took over Houston, and I see that in Gerard Mayo. My only thing is Drake Maye isn't coming out. I don't think he's anywhere near the talent that CJ Stroud was.
Stroud hit it.
I think 99% of the people that covered college football at any extent were not surprised by, to say that anybody saw CJ Stroud's historic season coming would be a lie. But I think most of us that have spent time covering college football were like, yeah, CJ Stroud's going to be great. Like, I didn't think there were question marks. That being said,
we did still say though, the Ohio State thing, like would Ohio State quarterback really played well? Like, there's still some of that.
That's fair. I remember standing at the playoff game against Georgia and watching him go off running the football. And I think it was Ryan Clark that was like, my guy just made himself a bunch of money. And it's like, he did. And look, the one knock that anybody had was, will he use his body? Like, will he be athletic? And he was like, okay, you really want to see it? I will. Like, I say that because the quarterbacks that have been tremendously successful, in my mind, haven't had a ton of question marks. Like, Joe Burrow didn't, by the end of that year, you were like, man, if you watch this season, Joe Burrow is going to be really good. Andrew Luck didn't have a ton of question marks. It doesn't mean that they all work. Like Trevor Lawrence is one we talked about. Like, I think he's been a disappointment since he came into the league. But I do think that in my mind, like the ones that, like, look, I don't have any question marks about Caleb Wilson. I think Caleb's going to be great. I honestly do. I think it's that simple. I personally think Drake is going to be really good. I think the coaching in North Carolina is an abject disaster. I think the way he uses his body is good. He's more athletic than he gets credit for being. And I think he was being asked to lift a lot for a team that wasn't particularly talented around him.
I had somebody tell me literally at the end of the 2022 season, I was at the combine following the 2022 season. I was having lunch with an exec, and we started talking about the quarterbacks. And he's like, next year's, he said after 2023 is going to be the big year for quarterbacks. And I'm like, who? And he's like, Caleb. And then he's like, and there's this dude, Drake Maye in North Carolina. And even then I was kind of like, oh, really? Like North Carolina? He's like, literally the whole staff was going to get fired. Like the guy saved the entire staff from being fired, in 2022. So it's the idea that he, the ability, and he probably got nitpicked at times, and, maybe people were hot and cold on him in some aspects, but I still think given what he had in 2022, and he was a younger player and things were new, going into this experience in New England, that's going to be somewhat similar, where you don't know how the talent's going to live up to it. You don't know what the culture is going to look like, the system's going to look like.
I
don't think it's
like
the worst thing.
Your Gerard Mayo point, and as you were talking, I was thinking about what you were saying in general about Houston. Think about some of the places that are working. Like Houston works in part because they found a coach that gets Houston, right? Detroit works in part because they found a coach that gets Detroit. Like I do think there's a modern, and admitting my own bias, part of the reason I'm excited about Antonio Pierce with the Raiders is because I don't know if he's a great coach, but I know he seems to get whatever that, like he's got this thing. And when you talk about identity, like Gerard Mayo understands what it means to be a New England Patriot, right? Like, and he is a New England, like it's not a job, it's a life.
Yeah,
right?
like he's a part of that special group of New England Patriots that are Patriot lifers. Mm-hmm. Like no matter what they do, obviously, he's in the head coaching game now, so he might end up on a different team in a few years. He might do this, he might do that, but like, your Gerard Mayos, your Matthew Slaters, you know what I mean? Guys like that who are absolute cornerstone pieces. And not just like the teams that they were on, but the history and the foundation of the organization. And you take that guy and then you inject him, into a coaching position, not even a head coach, linebackers coach, defensive coordinator, right? And this is a guy that we immediately, I don't even play defense, but I wanted to play for Gerard Mayo. Like knowing that Gerard Mayo was a coach on the staff made things better because he was more relatable. He was somebody that we could go talk to and just have conversation with, you know what I mean? As opposed to like the normal Patriot way, you know what I mean? So I could already get the sense that Gerard Mayo was, although he is your all-time Patriot, he understands that things work a little bit differently. You know what I mean? So
that's an interesting point that you make, when you talk to players and you're like, hey, what makes this coach great? The number of guys I talk to, they'll be like, he got me as a person.
Yeah,
like, he understood me as a person. And I think we forget that, like, when you get through the grind of a season, having a head coach there that you feel like just understands you as a human being.
What's crazy? Like, quickly about Gerard Mayo, I hadn't talked to Gerard since, obviously he accepted his job and everything. We had a great relationship, but, we haven't talked as much because I'm doing my thing, he's doing his thing. And right before we got on the show, I had seen that he reposted, something about my youth camp back home in Kentucky. You know what I'm saying? I haven't talked to Gerard Mayo in weeks. You know what I mean? But that's the type of guy he is. He loves his guys. Even if you don't talk to him, even if you don't necessarily have a reason to go be like, hey, Gerard, let's sit down and talk about this. I got this on my mind. I got this. Like, he cares. He's always thinking about you. He's always trying to make guys better as players, as humans, all the things that you want in a coach.
Echoing a lot of the sentiments I hear from former Steelers about Tomlin. Like, there's just certain guys that are like they're just interwoven into the fabric of a team.
Yeah,
The thing too, though, is like, especially with Tomlin, I think what he did well, like I remember when Raheem Morris got the job in Tampa, and Raheem was a great coach. But the problem was when he got that job and he ascended, there were guys on the team like Aqib Talib who, when like Raheem was a position coach, you can have a different relationship with players versus head coach. Not the same. And some of the players still kind of viewed him as a friend, a position coach, like that kind of thing. And I think it undermined Raheem over the length of his career. I think that's something he's probably learned now. And I think he's much better positioned now as he gets this the second shot in Atlanta. Tomlin was great at that. Like Tomlin came in, dudes respected him. They felt like he cared about them, but also he was like, I ain't putting him in. There's a line. There is a line. And I remember, I don't know if it was Casey Hampton or there was like it was the fitness test that, you had to come in and do your basic fitness test at the start. And I feel like it was Hampton, and he would always come in overweight and like out of shape. And he basically told him, I'm DQing you until you pass it. And people were like, he won't do that. Like, come on, man. This is like one of our dudes. Oh, yeah.
It
was like a week. Yeah. It took him like a week to run the mile and whatever he was supposed to. He just created that line where there was respect. There was mutual caring, all these things. But when it was time to do business, they understood, okay, this is what he expected me. I got to show up and do this.
The Chargers did some business today, drafting Joe Alt, but that led to an interesting moment in the show. I want you to dial into a little bit because J.C. Latham was the 7th overall pick to the Tennessee Titans. I mentioned it during our draft broadcast, but you and I both do radio interviews every week with Nashville. You know this team incredibly well, but you said something that's interesting to me, that for a city that was obsessed with Joe Alt, it was going to be Latham the whole way.
Titans, it was going to be Latham. Absolutely. Like it was 100%. And what was interesting to me was when I started to work on, I did like a mini mock at the last minute, and it's absolutely destroyed because it was all based on whether or not McCarthy went third. But when I was in the midst of doing it and I got to the 5th pick, I had heard Harbs really likes J.C. Latham. Like J.C. Latham is potentially the guy there at 5, and it kind of felt like that was the lean. Thought I got it right. I saw Daniel Jeremiah literally did his last mock. He put Latham there. I'm like, okay, I'm here. We're clearly hearing some of the same things. But in the process of that, I got into these conversations about how the OT stack would work. And we talked about Tennessee. And in that same vein, someone like I had actually 2 guys tell me, no, Tennessee actually likes Latham more than Alt. Like if they're both there, they will absolutely take Latham before they'll take Alt. So I think some Tennessee fans are going to look at it and go, oh, we didn't get this guy that we thought. You weren't taking that guy. You were taking Latham. And I think when you see the kind of like punishing run blocker that he can be, and then the growth that I think can still get there in terms of his pass blocking, he will be a plug and play starter from the second he walks into the organization. He is a massive dude. Wasn't that during the show where we were like, all of a sudden we all got quiet because we were watching J.C. Latham
just walk down the hallway.
Walk down the hall. I thought we were talking about when he broke Goodell's back.
And then he broke Goodell's back.
Walking out there like Joe Biden.
First it was he's walking down the hallway and it got quiet. And we were like, are we literally just all sitting here? Like got quiet. And then he picked up Goodell. We're like, he broke the commissioner.
But like this is one of the dangers of the mock draft world.
Absolutely.
Is that everybody keeps reading and they're like, oh no, Joe Alt's better than J.C. Latham because everybody mocked him. And it's like, okay, well, what if this scouting room just had a different opinion? And then the presumption is, well, we got our second choice. We don't see the draft boards. How the hell can you know that? And that's it's frustrating because even leading up to the draft, the number of times people are like, well, trade up and get this guy, trade up and get this guy. It's like, well, what if teams, we learned this today, like teams did not value J.J. McCarthy the way everybody thought. Like the Giants were supposed to be in the market to trade up for J.J. McCarthy. They could have taken him at 6 and they didn't.
And we saw Amarius Mims go where I showed you guys the stack with all these other teams. Like Mims was like, some teams really liked him. And then some teams, they were like, oh, like end of the first, fringe second, because doesn't have this huge wealth of experience. You are projecting there. He is very raw. There are a lot of different things there that cause different grades to happen. And you can't just assume, unless it's like Jonathan Ogden, right? Unless it's like, I mean, it has to be once in a century type of tight end. Anthony Munoz, like somebody who you're just,
Robert
coming
Gallery
in the league.
The Raiders drafted
Robert Gallery, sure. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Tony Mandrich out of Michigan State is one of my favorites. Yeah, in 1989. Thank you for leaving Barry Sanders at number 3 for the Detroit Lions. No, but it's, I think offensive tackle stacks, particularly when there's a lot of good ones, teams lean into mentality, what they want to do scheme-wise. Honestly, some teams look at run blockers and they go, hey, you know what? It's a lot harder to teach a run, like to teach an offensive line to be nasty, to road grade, to just kick the shit out of people.
You can't teach somebody that.
You get finesse guys, and I'll give you one. Andre Dillard. When Andre Dillard came into the league, all pass blocking. It was like, this dude is not a run blocker. Like he's a finesse pass blocker, all this stuff. And it's like, well, can the Eagles teach him to be no. And not only that, the finesse was a problem in terms of his pass blocking too. And he ends up in Tennessee and it's the same kind of problems. I am a firm believer, after covering the league for 20 plus years, when you get nasty guys who are willing to go out there and just pound the shit out of you running the football, you got to take them and you can help teach them the other stuff.
I mean, you've run behind them, right? Like, it's just got to be such a weird adjustment, because for so many of us, we're just looking at the evaluations on a mock draft. But like to your point about systems, every offensive line is a much different, like the difference between asking like sort of a zone gap blocking system versus not, like power blocking system, like these all require much different athletes up front. And that also affects your job as a running back. Like, I think we look at these and we're like, well, I'm going to rate fat guy A versus fat guy B. And it's like, but what if, well, that's like saying I'm gonna rate two chefs, but one of them's a sushi chef and one of them works at a steakhouse. Like, just because they have the same job as a chef doesn't mean that you can even compare them in what they do.
Yeah. You know, one thing that Bill Belichick used to always say is everybody's got a job to do. Whether you play quarterback, whether you grab towels, whether you're the GM, whether you're the owner, everybody's got a job to do. And it's the job of the ownership, the management of these organizations to look at their roster. What do we have? We got a great running back in Tony Pollard that we just signed. We got a great quarterback in Will Levis that we just signed. We got a great receiver, Calvin Ridley, that we just signed. A tackle is really going to help us out. If he can run block for Tony Pollard, then we can teach him to pass protect. That way Will Levis can throw to Calvin Ridley.
And by the way, he's a right tackle. Yeah. He's not a left tackle. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's one thing if you're like, we just took a left tackle who can't pass block.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah.
Okay?
Honestly, right tackles run block. Yeah. Left tackles pass pro.
Yeah,
and so Tony Pollard's going to know, or run to the right. Will Levis is going to know he's going to have protection to the left, and he's going to get the ball off, and that's just going to make their team better. But then you go out there and you get a left tackle and you try to put him at right tackle, and it's just not a good fit. That's just because you like that flavor of ice cream. That's when you get, that's when you just get bad business decisions.
Yeah, I think it's just a reminder to Titans fans, like, your team did what they wanted to do. And again, I will stress, for what it's worth, your team's new head coach, his dad, who came over with him, is the offensive line coach. So this is one of those things where, like,
and by the way, not just any offensive line coach, like a
renowned,
Bill Callahan. My God,
even I know who Bill Callahan is. I played running back my whole, you know what I mean? Right. But I know who Bill Callahan is.
Literally one of the most valuable position coaches in all of football.
If you are a Titans fan and you look at this draft and you don't give benefit of the doubt to your new head coach who looked at his dad and say, hey, Dad,
Bill. Right,
who
Bill.
do you want to coach?
Exactly.
Which one? Yeah. Like, if you can't give benefit of the doubt on that today, you're screwed. Like, you're never going to, because this is the ultimate, like, they haven't proven that they don't deserve that yet at this point. Another pick that was interesting is Xavier Worthy. Only interesting because we thought there'd be a run on wide receivers because so many quarterbacks went early, right? That run didn't happen till late. And Xavier Worthy was just sort of free falling and had to be getting frustrated until he was drafted.
Yeah, I think there was an element of frustration because he had a really good workout with the Colts. I think he had a good visit with the Colts. There was a connection there. There was a thought process with the Colts that at 15 that it's like, hey, he fits this layer of they need a take off the top kind of layer to work with Josh Downs, who's a slot short to intermediate guy. Pittman, who does a little bit of everything, can kind of layer out throughout the field, but they needed a guy who's speed and could challenge safeties. And so when that didn't happen, and then he started to trickle down the board, but let's be honest, we had the run where we're sitting there going, okay, well, now it's all offensive tackles. Then the defense hit, and it's like, okay, here's some of the defensive guys. All the wide receivers were kind of suffering for a bit there. That weren't the elites, right? Mm-hmm. Brian Thomas suffered. I mean, there were a number of guys that suffered. But the prize, like when he got taken by Kansas City, like his guys were like, let's go. That's like, you're mad. You're sitting there and you're mad. And then you're like, oh, I got Mahomes. Like, that changes everything.
Sometimes what don't work out for you works out for you. Mm-hmm. I mean, you sit there and I know what it's like, you know what I mean? Because I know what it's like to be one to get drafted at a certain point and you fall in and you fall in and you fall in. And whenever I got drafted, my first thought was, I'm playing with Brady. I'm finna win a Super Bowl. What? Are you kidding me? Third round? I'll take that because I'm gonna get a Super Bowl. I'm gonna make it up in the back end. X, Y, Z, right? That's exactly what Xavier Worthy's thinking. What I fell to I'm
gonna get paid eventually.
I'm gonna win 2 Super Bowls. I'm gonna get paid. Because he is an example. Like, I hate to bring up negative, but you look at, Rashee Rice. They just got rid of Tyreek Hill. He's got the opportunity to be a guy. If he just goes in there, keeps his nose clean, he runs fast, he catches the ball, catches a couple touchdowns, gets Patrick Mahomes on his side. He has the league, his career, the world by the balls.
Only thing that scares me though, and I hope people don't do this, I hope people don't compare him to Tyreek because of the speed.
Yeah, because he's not. It's not a comparison.
No,
it's not a comparison at all.
It's not. But you just like, to me, you have to love him for what he is, which is he's going to run a lot of vertical stuff. It's not going to be like he's running 7 different routes. Like his route tree is not going to be this huge varied thing. He's just going to do a lot of vertical stuff. But the thing is, and like one evaluator was like, here's the thing about him. Yeah, 4.21 speed. There are some things that I don't like about him. He's like, but there is a truth. When you see him get a step on somebody on tape, he's gone. You are not going to catch this guy, but he didn't have the quarterback to constantly get him the ball where he needed to. That's different now. Like Mahomes be throwing off his back foot, off platform, and he's still going to be able to get him wherever he is on the field.
Do you think that a guy like Xavier Worthy helps? How much do you think that helps Travis Kelce? Because you look at it, like you just safeties, said, man. Like you just said, if you're a corner or if you're somebody that's got to cover Xavier Worthy, you literally just have to just not let him get behind you. But that's going to take so much attention off the back part of the field.
If he can, like, if you're in the first quarter and he can just hit one big one, now you have a safety shade.
It doesn't even have to be a touchdown.
Yeah, no,
just
but you're going to have
one for 50 yards.
And then that was something I did a film breakdown with a bunch of guys a couple of years ago, right as Tyreek was leaving the Chiefs, a bunch of guys that played. And it was all cut-ups of watching the way the defense was having to cheat the entire. Not only were safeties playing for the back, safeties were playing to the portion of the field where they thought Tyreek was going to end up. Yeah. And once Andy Reid saw that, it made the little out stuff really easy to the opposite side of the field because everybody's cheating a yard this way, and that yard made a huge difference, right? So I was under the assumption that the loss of Tyreek Hill would actually hurt Kelce in the offense far more than it did. They adjusted to that. They did a beautiful job. To your point, though, it's going to be the same thing. Yeah. Like everybody's going to have to be adjusting to where that route's going to end, because the thing of it is, if you can't get right to Mahomes, he's going to run around for a minute and then he's just going to
go down the field. You're going to have to play him. You're going to have to play 2 high safeties. You're going to have to literally put not everybody, but you're going to have to put 2 guys in the back part of the field and be like, you cannot let this guy get behind. And I was going to say, to that point, when you think about 2 high shells, they still got Isaiah Pacheco, who runs through people left and right through 6-man boxes, 7-man boxes, 8-man boxes. Now you're going to consistently give him a 2 high shell because you got Xavier Worthy on the outside, you got Travis Kelce. I was going to say something about Rashee Rice, but that's unknown at this point. You know what I mean? But
if you get Rashee Rice back,
if you get Rashee Rice back, it's another option. And it's like, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I have to stop Mahomes and all these weapons. You know what I mean? I have to put Pacheco at the last of the list of priorities. But if you do that, you know what he can do to a defense.
He's a murder runner, man. He runs like he's mad at everybody.
He runs like J.C. Latham blocks. Truly.
That's the whole reason the Raiders gave Christian Wilkins $100 million. Because your only thought is like, look, I'm not going to be able to cover that. So now I got to hope to God.
Yeah, we got to get to
Crosby
before.
And Wilkins together can get to Mahomes over and over and over. Like, that's the only path. I think the AFC West is going to have to do that.
I also want to be fair to Worthy too. He's not just a one-note guy. Like, that's the thing. He does have a more of a repertoire than one note. So that's a positive.
A competitive guy too. Like, go back and watch some of the games last year where late in the game he was open, didn't get the ball. Like, he is that type. Like, there's a difference to me between a receiver that's being, versus a receiver that's like, man, I was open. And you could see that fire from him. Like, I really like the pick. I really like the kid. I will ask you guys selfishly before we leave about my favorite team, because they're my favorite team. I was sitting there. I didn't know what to do. Like, I'm so used to it. Like, damn, I'm used to it being a disaster. Every year I just sit there. But when you told me it was Brock Bowers, a little stunned. I think I was shell-shocked. I didn't give a great reaction because I didn't know what to say. Like, but I don't know if you're the Raiders, if you were going to go quarterback, 6 were off the board there. So there's nothing, you're not going to go quarterback at 13. So now it just felt like they went best player available. And I think considering they do have needs on the defensive side of the ball and they do have needs on the offensive line, I was a little surprised, but I think this is also kind of the modern NFL. Like, how many weapons can I have? How many ways can I beat you? So does it answer any of the needs? No, but arguably one of the best players in this year's draft.
There's a thing too with him. A lot of the offense that he ran at Georgia was a lot of short, like very much short to intermediate stuff. He was the number one on their offense, particularly the passing game. So much of that offense functioned through him. But he did a ton of like 10 yards and in, 15 yards and in. And he had some, obviously big plays down the field, things like that. But when I look at the Raiders, Devontae Adams, long speed, Tucker, they get Tucker going. I mean, that dude can burn ass. Like and so I'm like, okay, so you got guys that can definitely open up pockets, and I think Bowers can do really well in the pockets. For me, I sat there and I just thought of Michael Mayer, and I'm like, okay, so now you have 2 tight ends. The good thing is it's not duplicated. They're different kind of tight. Yeah, Michael Mayer's like a blown up china shop. Like he's baby Gronk, and the way he plays does not look. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure if these 2 guys stand next to each other, they're not going to look alike at the tight end position. So as I sat and thought about it during the show, I'm like, okay, I could see you doing 2 tight end and a lot of 2 tight end personnel, but it'll be this kind of, you're cheating because Bowers is going to be in the slot, right? Like he's not really going to, you'll have Michael Mayer will be in line, and then you'll have Bowers in the slot. And that's ultimately what he's going to kind of end up being. But you said it. Can Luke Getsy, can he unlock him? Can he scheme the way that they need to get everything out of him? We'll see. I mean, this work's cut out for him. And I do think you have to have an element of creativity with Bowers, whether it's using jet sweeps, lining them up in the backfield, working from the slot. There has to be an element of creativity to get the most out of them. And now that's on him and that's on the staff.
Look, if you can't address the quarterback, the best thing you can do is give the quarterback more help, in my mind. So, look, do I love the thought of Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew being my quarterback room for my favorite team? That doesn't instill faith.
Why the hell not? The hell not?
No, do you?
Minshew's got a 6 stash, bro. That's all I need.
I mean, okay. If I want to go in an RV and jorts and go on a weird,
he's going to be the savior of your Raiders, bro.
Yeah, I mean, you think?
Yeah. Why not?
I love it.
Why not? Are you with him right now?
That's what I love about Dame. What I love about Dame. Dame is such a positive guy. That he's like, you know what? I see that you would like this, and I want this for you. So we're gonna
with the attitude you have, Gardner Minshew ain't gonna. Look, if you sit around here and you're like, you know what? Maybe Gardner Minshew might do something.
I'm not gonna lie. When they signed him, I was like, well, he did look good at times last year for Indy.
Listen, the second Damien and I get in the hallway, he's gonna be like, they screwed.
He's not even gonna get that far. Like just second the show ends, he's gonna look over and be like, I didn't mean any of them. No, but look, the hardest part about the AFC right now is if you don't have a quarterback, how do you win at the highest level? That being said, what are the chances that any of these quarterbacks, if the line in the sand is, well, you got to have somebody better than Mahomes. All right, so you got to have somebody better than one of the 2 or 3 best of all time. That's not going to happen. So at some point, you just have to look at it and say, well, I wanted a quarterback. The quarterback I wanted isn't there. I better build the best team I can.
And of all the things that were available at that pick, if you're going to go a skill position, you're going to choose Bowers or you're going to choose a wide receiver, right? He is the least traditional, in terms of what you can do with him that can cause mismatches, because that's what you're looking for at that point. Give us a mismatch. Could you have taken Brian Thomas Jr.? Yeah. Does Brian Thomas Jr. do things that a lot of people are familiar with scheme-wise? Absolutely. Are there a lot of Brian Thomas Jr.'s? In some respect, right? In terms of what he does inside of an offense. Bowers is different. You better have a corner who can handle him, like a slot corner who can handle him, or you better have a turn and run linebacker who can actually chase his ass in coverage.
How many linebackers can actually do that?
Very, very few. So I would guess when he lines up in the slot, it's going to be a slot corner. Okay, well, how big is that slot corner? Because, he's not huge. He's not Gronk.
He's bigger than Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, he's 240.
The final 4 teams standing this year all had significant impact from the tight end position. Whatever that looks like.
That's a good point. Yeah.
They all had from difference-making tight ends. I see that. Also, it should be pointed out, with Joe Alt gone by then, J.C. Latham was gone by then, Olu Fashanu was gone by then. So you're also looking at it without knowing their draft board and saying, what if they're looking at it and saying, guys, do we really want the 4th best tackle on our board right now? Versus this guy over here that's clearly best player available, which I said it at the end of our show. And as we wrap this, I think that's one thing that stood out to me. I thought this was a really patient, well-executed NFL draft by a lot of teams. As much as quarterbacks are overdrafted, fine, quarterbacks are overdrafted. But even in that process, Minnesota didn't have to give up nearly what people thought they would have to give up coming into the day. The Broncos stayed pat and took a quarterback that a lot of people thought they were going to take anyway.
I feel better about the Raiders taking Bowers at 13 than let's say they traded 2 firsts to get up to 8 to take Michael Penix, or 2 first plus to trade up and get Michael Penix, because they would have to pay a quarterback premium. I'm like, I don't know about this.
We just get like Penix at 8. In general, Penix at 8 plus get mortgaging your future. No, like I think cost has to matter, especially when you're not a great football team. Like when you need next year's first rounders because you're still trying to become a good football team. I just think that's a huge part of it. Yahoo Sports, by the way, if you're listening to this, depending on when you've listened to this spectacular episode, is going to have every pick of day 2 covered. So make sure that you watch us. We're going to be back after a long marathon day. We're going to be back again going through all of the picks. And then all the way through the draft, you can get the Yahoo Sports app. And if you're an iPhone user, be sure to check it out because there's emojis in there. So you can give 1 of 3 different emojis to every pick. You can also see how other fans are voting. You can see how we're voting. So it's a really cool way to be interactive with the experience.
And I encourage people, so the first round draft, the show is on YouTube, okay? The tape version. Go watch when Penix goes, like, just, you don't have to watch the whole show. Awesome if you do. We'd really appreciate it. But at the very least, go find it on YouTube and watch when Penix comes off. That little snippet of like 4 minutes is hilarious. Like, you definitely have to see that.
And look for the guy with the nice ass crochet shirt too. Y'all are never gonna forget about these crochet shirts.
Captain Crochet is what we're gonna nickname you. That's it. What do we got tomorrow? What's the outfit tomorrow?
I'm not gonna tell you.
Oh, okay.
Why would I do that? I didn't tell you that I was wearing this.
Well, I just wondered if maybe a little.
No way, dude. You just gotta see the Riz tomorrow.
Okay.
See the Riz tomorrow.
Can't.
You and Rocco both.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, Rocco out in these comments, like out in these streets, trying to shoot a shot.
My wife said, although Rocco's right, I'll f him up.
All right, follow us on social media. By the way, Damien is at DHX34 because you want to be complicated. I mean, you're like, was Damien Harris taken? Like what?
Probably.
It might have been. Like I was like 17. I was like 17, dude.
Yeah, well, you know what? The rest of us are easy. At Charles Robinson, see how that works. At Jason Fitz, see how that works. Although Stone didn't do much better. At SJ Rochelle, to get to our producer behind the glass. I said that so condescendingly too. He's just looking at it. I know. I was like, look at that. Leave us a 5-star review, by the way, because that matters. A review. Let us know what you think of the show, unless you didn't like it, in which case, f off. And we don't care what your opinions are. And most importantly, CMAC back Sunday with Nate Tice. They're going to get their thoughts on the draft. And we'll be back on Tuesday. I'll be back on Tuesday with Frank. So be sure to keep hanging out with us. I said it on the draft show. I'll say it again. We don't have jobs without you guys that choose to spend time listening to what we do. Really thankful for everybody that has joined us on this draft journey. I know there's a million options, a million ways to watch. We're proud of what we did tonight, but most importantly, we're thankful you guys took the time to listen. So thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you in a few days.